All right, thank you all so much again for having me. And as with the previous presentation, I have some resources too that will be available at the last slide, but I've also put it in chat just so you're not having to furiously try to jot down some of the URLs and resources that I'm going to be talking about. But yes, thank you for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Sarah Johnson. I'm with your local National Weather Service office. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the National Weather Service and what are some of the resources that we have. A little caveat, when I was asked this, when I was asked to present to you all, I did watch Dr. Robinson's presentation that he gave a few months ago. And I thought he did a really good job of explaining the difference between climate and weather. And so a lot of what I do in my job is focused on weather, focused on the next 7 days, which when we're talking about climate and climate impacts, that we're generally talking about on a larger scale over a larger time scale as well. But there's obviously a lot of overlap between the two areas. And there's even overlap within the National Weather Service. Our office is a local office. We're focused more on the local area and a shorter time scale. But we have a national center called the Climate Prediction Center that focuses more on the seasonal variability and more on, the longer range, getting into the climate range. So the National Weather Service, we are a part of the federal government. We're under the Department of Commerce, under NOAA. NOAA is an umbrella organization that the National Weather Service is underneath. We are part of the whole enterprise. There's obviously a lot of private companies that do weather forecasting, and not to mention broadcast media. But we are the only official source for weather watches, warnings, and advisories. So 99 times out of 100 that you're getting a warning, be it a tornado warning or getting a watch like a winter storm watch, that's probably coming from the National Weather Service because of the public safety factor. Like I said, we're the only source for official watches and warnings. As mentioned, the local office, and I'll get to exactly how many offices there are across the country, but our local office, the one that I work at, is right here. It's actually in Burlington County. We're officially known as the Philadelphia Mount Holly office because back in the early 1990s, we were in Philadelphia and then moved to our current building, which is technically our mailing address is Mount Holly, but we are physically in West Hampton, as you know, often is the case around this part of New Jersey. But this is a look at our operations floor. We are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. And there's 121 local forecast offices across the country. This kind of gives you an idea of how expansive they are. And we also have national centers. I already mentioned the Climate Prediction Center. Probably some of our most famous national centers, National Hurricane Center, as well as the Storm Prediction Center, which I use kind of a medical analogy that as at the local office level, we're kind of the general practitioners in that we have a very focused local area, but we deal with every kind of weather that comes to this area. Meanwhile, at the national level, those are the specialists. So they are looking at the whole country, in some cases beyond just the bounds of the country. But they are focused on a specific type of meteorology. So National Hurricane Center obviously is focused on tropical systems, for example. So I shared with you a resource that has a whole bunch of, shared with you a link that has a whole bunch of resources hyperlinked. But I want to emphasize a little bit, we talked about, we have alerts up now for coastal flooding for tonight. And what exactly does that all mean? I always like to emphasize what is the difference between a watch and a warning, because there is quite a bit of uncertainty. So to start off on this timeline, it goes from left to right, being the furthest out from a potential hazardous weather event, to right being at the right-hand side of this image being that it's already happening or it is imminent. And so you start off we have various outlooks, both individualized outlooks as well as a one-stop shop called a hazardous weather outlook. And that is going to be potentially where you have the most lead time to any potential hazardous weather event. But it's also not going to have the least amount of detail, and it's probably going to be covering a broader area. Then we go into watch. So when we get to be within 2 to 3 days of any potential hazardous weather, be it like more of our longer developing weather, like winter weather or flooding, we may issue a watch. A little bit different when we're talking about severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, because so many things have to come together just right, that a watch for a tornado watch or a severe thunderstorm watch is probably only going to be issued like 2 to 6 hours before when we get storms develop. And then if something is imminent, whatever hazardous weather we are warning for is already occurring, or we're seeing very strong evidence that it's about to occur, then that's when we would issue a warning. Tornado warning, blizzard warning, flash flood warning, severe thunderstorm warning, quite a lot of different warnings that we would issue. There's another one on here that I hesitate to mention too much because it is eventually going to be going away, but there's something called an advisory. And that just means hazardous weather that is occurring, and it could be hazardous if you don't take proper precautions, but is not necessarily completely life-threatening. So the prime example I give is if we have 3 inches of snow here in South Jersey, snow, you need to take caution. You might need to add some extra time into your commute. There's certainly going to be some travel congestion, but as long as people take it slow and are mindful of the potential slippery conditions, it's probably not going to shut down things. Compare that with 10 inches of snow. Now that's a possibility of that's going to really cause some major issues, major headaches with services around our area. So the 3 inches of snow, that would be a winter weather advisory. 10 inches of snow, that'd be a winter storm warning. All that being said, we know this is confusing, and currently within the National Weather Service, there's a campaign for hazard simplification to try to make things simpler, to make it more easily understandable by the general public. So eventually, and this is not even anywhere in the near-term future, but eventually this will go away and we'll just have like a plain language statement if there's something that is hazardous but not quite reaching criteria. So as I mentioned, and this is just kind of a visual representation of what I said, outlook furthest out in time, but it's going to be covering a broader area, and they're going to have the least amount of detail. So the yellow area in here would represent what is, in this case, we're using a severe thunderstorm as an example, and what is a severe thunderstorm outlook. A watch may cover multiple counties, even multiple states, starting to hone in a little bit more detail, and then finally get a warning, and that could not even cover an entire county. That could just be a portion of a county. It has the most amount of detail, but will be issued the least for the closest to the potential impacts of hazardous weather. So with that, the resources that I have available, like I said, is in the chat. It's also, you can use this QR code as well as the link here. And so, yeah, with that, I will definitely be on at the end of the presentation. If you all have any questions about the weather in general, we certainly have had enough interesting weather over the last several days, especially. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. So thank you all.